My name is Natalie Harrison. I'm 37 years old. Before everything broke open, I used to believe betrayal would arrive with noise. I thought it would come like a storm through the front door. Raised voices, slammed hands, a sentence so cruel and undeniable that you could circle it forever in your memory and say, there. That was the moment my life split in half. I didn't know betrayal could arrive in a cheerful email from a middle school science teacher. I was in my office when it happened, halfway through a budget review, coffee going cold beside my laptop, when my phone buzzed with a new message. The subject line was almost sweet enough to be ridiculous. Amazing family discovery. You must be so proud. For one strange second, I smiled. My son Noah was in 8th grade, and his biology class had been doing one of those ancestry projects that schools like to dress up as education and self-discovery. Permission slips, DNA kits, family tree posters. I had signed the form without even reading all of it. It seemed harmless, educational, cute even. Noah had been excited about it for weeks. He spit into the little tube at the kitchen table and asked me if our ancestors were Vikings. I told him with complete confidence that we were probably boring people with boring jobs and bad handwriting. Then I opened the attachment. I remember every detail after that with an accuracy I wish I didn't have. The shape of the spreadsheet still open behind my email, the sound of the air conditioner humming above me, the way my hand slipped off the mouse because suddenly it felt like my fingers didn't belong to me anymore. At the top of the project was Noah's name. Below that was a neatly built family tree. Then the words that made the room go silent. Mother, unknown biological match, close familial match. Aunt Jessica Harrison, 24.8%. There was a note typed beneath it in Noah's own careful voice, the kind he used when he wanted adults to see he was being mature. He had written that the DNA results showed I was not his biological mother. He had written that Aunt Jessica's match percentage suggested she was his biological mother. He had written that he asked Evan about it, my boyfriend, the man I had loved for years, the man I thought I was building a family with, and that Evan said they would all talk that night. He ended the note with, I'm not upset, just confused. I stared at the screen until the words stopped looking like language. Then I called Evan. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. I called my sister Jessica. Straight to voicemail. Then I called my parents. My father answered on the first ring, and before I even said hello, he let out a breath that told me everything. Natalie, he said quietly, let me explain. That was the moment my body knew before my mind did. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back into the cabinet behind me. You knew, I said. Silence. Dad, I said again, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Did you know Jessica is Noah's biological mother? He exhaled. This isn't a conversation for the phone. Did you know? Yes. Just one word. Not shocked, not confused, not asking what I was talking about. Yes. I hung up without saying another thing. For a long time, I stood in the middle of my office staring at the wall, not crying, not breathing properly, not thinking in full thoughts. Just fragments. 13 years. Soccer games. Fevers. First day of school. Halloween costumes. Late night math homework. The first time he called me mom, and I cried in the bathroom because I had wanted that sound for so long. And everyone knew. Everyone except me. I left work without telling anyone why. I drove home too fast, one hand locked around the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my chest hurt. Evan's car was there. Jessica's car was there. My parents' SUV was there. It looked less like a family visit and more like an ambush. They were all in my living room when I walked in, arranged so neatly it was almost insulting. Evan on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Jessica in the armchair, pale and rigid, fingers twisted together. My mother beside my father on the love seat, both of them already wearing the sorrowful expressions of people who plan to call themselves well-meaning. No one spoke at first. I closed the front door behind me. How long? I asked. My mother stood halfway, her face crumpling. Natalie, sweetheart, how long have you all known? Evan lifted his head. His eyes were red, as if he had already given himself permission to grieve what he had done to me. Jessica answered first. Since Noah was 8 months old. The words hit me harder than if she had slapped me. 8 months, I repeated. You've all known for over 12 years. My father started talking in that calm voice he always used when he wanted a situation to feel manageable. We were trying to protect you. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because something inside me had broken too fast for tears. Protect me from what? I asked. The truth? Evan finally spoke. Natalie, please. It was one night. One horrible mistake. I turned to look at him, and that was the moment my anger became sharp. One night with who? I asked. Say it. He swallowed. With Jessica. In case anyone here has forgotten, I said, looking from him to my sister, Jessica is my sister, so let's be accurate. You slept with my sister. Jessica started crying. I didn't care. It was before the wedding, Evan said quickly. At my bachelor party, we were drunk and... At your bachelor party, I repeated. The room spun for a second. You think some betrayals can't get uglier once they already exist, and then someone hands you a shovel. You slept with my sister at your bachelor party, I said, each word slow and clear, and then stood across from me at the altar and promised me forever. Natalie, Evan whispered. I didn't know she was pregnant when we got married. Jessica covered her face. I didn't know either. I found out 2 weeks later. I looked at her, my sister. The girl who used to crawl into my bed after thunderstorms when we were kids. The girl whose hair I braided for prom. The girl I defended when she got suspended in high school because I said she was reckless, not cruel. And when did you know Noah wasn't mine? I asked. Jessica lowered her hand slowly. When he was 8 months old. He got sick. We took him to the ER. They did blood work, and the doctor said his blood type made it impossible that he came from you and Evan. The room went so still I could hear the kitchen clock. And instead of telling me, I said, you told them. I pointed at my parents. Jessica nodded once, crying harder. And him. I pointed at Evan. Another nod. And then all of you, I said, looking around at the 4 people who had defined my life for years, agreed to lie to me. My mother got to her feet. We thought it was best. For who? For Noah, she said desperately. For you. You loved him so much. That sentence almost destroyed me. Because she said it as if my love were the reason I should forgive them. As if they had done me a kindness by building my motherhood on a lie. Evan leaned forward. Natalie, you are his mother in every way that matters. Except biologically, I snapped. Except that my sister is the one who gave birth to him. Except that you all stood around and decided I didn't deserve the truth. Jessica whispered. I was scared. Oh, I'm sure you were. My father tried again. The longer it went on, the harder it became to tell you. No, I said. The longer it went on, the easier it became for all of you to live with what you'd done. No one answered that. For a moment I thought I might scream. Instead, I looked toward the stairs. Does Noah know? Evan nodded. He found out this afternoon when the results came in. He wanted to tell you tonight, but your parents thought we should all be here. To manage me, I said. No one denied it. Where is he? Upstairs, Jessica said softly. He's scared. That broke through everything. Not because of them. Because of him. I went upstairs without another word. Noah's door was closed. I knocked once. Come in, he said. He was sitting on his bed with his laptop open, shoulders hunched, his face washed pale with confusion. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw immediately that he had been crying. Mom, he said, and the word nearly took me apart. I'm sorry. I crossed the room and sat beside him. You have nothing to be sorry for, I said. But I ruined everything. I put my arm around him and pulled him close, just like I had when he was small and frightened by thunderstorms. No, I whispered. The adults ruined this a long time ago. You just found the truth. He looked at me with wet eyes. Are you mad at me? I held the back of his head and kissed his hair. I could never be mad at you. But Aunt Jessica is my real mom. Pain moved through me so fast I nearly flinched. Still, I said, I'm your real mom in every way that matters. I'm the one who raised you. I'm the one who loves you. That does not change tonight. He threw his arms around me then, holding on hard. And I let him. I let him because he was 13 and scared and innocent. And because no DNA test on earth could erase the years my heart had already spent becoming his home. I don't want things to change, he whispered. I closed my eyes. Neither did I. But downstairs, 4 people were waiting in the wreckage they had made, and I already knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. When I came back downstairs, they were all exactly where I had left them. That was the part that made it feel unreal. No one had moved. No one had changed position. My mother still stood with one hand pressed over her mouth. My father still sat forward, elbows on his knees, as if posture could somehow communicate regret. Jessica's mascara had bled in dark lines under her eyes. Evan looked like a man waiting for a verdict. And maybe he was. I stayed near the staircase, one hand still on the railing, as though I needed to remain connected to the floor above where Noah still existed, where the only honest heartbreak in the house was sitting alone in his room with a laptop open to the page that had detonated all our lives. I want everyone out, I said. My mother shook her head immediately. Natalie, please, not like this. I laughed again, softer this time. Not amusement. just disbelief so deep it had nowhere else to go. You don't get to tell me what this should look like. Evan stood up. Can we just talk for 10 more minutes? I looked at him. 10 more minutes. After 12 years of lies. After my sister gave birth to my son and let me spend more than a decade believing he came from me. After my parents helped preserve the lie because they loved him too much to risk losing access to him and loved me too little to tell me the truth. No, I said. You do not get another 10 minutes. Jessica wiped at her face. Natalie, I know you hate me. I turned toward her so fast she visibly recoiled. Hate isn't a big enough word for what I feel right now. She started crying harder. Once that would have affected me. Once Jessica crying could still activate some old reflex in me, some older sister instinct to soften, to fix, to defend. But that night I looked at her and saw something I had never let myself see before. Not weakness, cowardice. She had hidden behind it for years. Evan took one step toward me. I stayed. I raised him with you. I didn't walk away. That was the wrong thing to say. You stayed? I repeated. That's your defense? You stayed in the life you stole from me, and now you want credit for not leaving. His face tightened. I loved you, he said. I stared at him. And for the first time that night, I felt something colder than rage. Revulsion. Because love without truth is just possession wearing a nicer suit. If this is what your love looks like, I said quietly, I would rather have been hated. My father stood up then, slower than the others, like he still believed he could bring order into the room if he used the right tone. You need time to process this. No, I said. What I need is for every one of you to walk out of my house before I say something that can't be taken back. It's late, my mother said. Where is Jessica supposed to go? I looked at her. My own mother, still triaging Jessica's inconvenience while I stood there with the bones of my life sticking out of my skin. I don't care, I said. She can go to a hotel. She can go to one of the many homes apparently built on secrets. She just can't stay here. Evan opened his mouth again, then closed it. Good. For once, silence suited him. Jessica rose from the chair on shaky legs. Can I at least talk to Noah before I leave? No. Her expression crumpled. He's my son. The words echoed through the room. I felt something twist so hard inside me, I had to grip the railing to stay upright. Then I answered her with a calmness that frightened even me. No, I said again. He is a 13-year-old boy whose whole life was just ripped open by the people who were supposed to protect him. Tonight he needs peace, not you. Jessica looked down. My father put a hand on my mother's shoulder. Come on, he murmured to her. But my mother wasn't ready to give up. She stepped toward me, tears spilling down her face. We really believed we were doing the right thing. That sentence landed like poison. Then you should live with the consequences of what you believed. Natalie? No, I snapped. You do not get to cry your way out of this. You let me build my life around a lie. You let me love that child with complete trust while knowing the truth. You let me call myself his mother in front of everyone while knowing I had been robbed of the most basic right any person deserves, reality. My mother flinched like I had struck her. For a second, a flash of guilt moved through me. Then I remembered Noah upstairs, apologizing for a crime committed by adults. The guilt vanished. Evan picked up his keys from the coffee table. I'll come by tomorrow for some things. No, I said, you won't. His head jerked up. Natalie, the house is in my name. I bought it before we got married. You can coordinate through a lawyer. He stared at me, stunned. Jessica whispered, a lawyer? Yes, I said, looking from one face to the next. That would be wise. No one spoke after that. One by one, they left. My parents tried to pause at the door, maybe for one final glance backward, maybe for absolution. I gave them neither. Jessica walked out with her shoulders curled inward, as if she were the injured one. Evan lingered last, hand on the doorknob, looking at me the way people look at a house fire they know they caused, but still can't believe is burning. I never meant for this to happen, he said. I held his gaze. Everything that happened after the first lie, I said, was a choice. Then I opened the door wider. He left. When the house was finally empty, the silence was enormous. It felt different from ordinary silence. Heavier. Not peaceful. More like the air after a collision, when all the noise is gone but the damage is still vibrating in the walls. I went upstairs. Noah was still awake, sitting cross-legged on his bed now, the laptop closed. He looked up when I came in, searching my face for answers I did not have. It's just us tonight, I said. He nodded slowly. Are they gone? Yes. He hesitated. Even Aunt Jessica? I sat down beside him again. Yes. He looked at his hands for a long moment. Is she bad? Children don't ask questions the way adults do. Adults ask to defend, to accuse, To clarify, children ask from the center of the wound. They ask because their hearts are still trying to assemble a world they can survive in. I chose my words carefully. She did something very wrong, I said. A lot of adults did. He swallowed. Do I have to call her mom now? The question cracked something open inside me. I took his hand. No, you do not have to do anything tonight except breathe and get through this. He leaned against me then, all elbows and fear and 13-year-old confusion, and I wrapped an arm around him. Do you still want pizza? I asked quietly. He gave a tiny laugh that sounded more like a hiccup. With extra cheese? With extra cheese. I ordered it from my phone while he put on a basketball video he didn't really watch. When the pizza came, we ate in his room with the box between us, both of us pretending this was just another Friday night, just another dinner on the bed, just another ordinary moment in a life that still made sense. He fell asleep close to midnight with the lamp still on. I pulled the blanket over him and stood there longer than necessary, watching his face in the dim light. There were things I noticed now that I hated myself for noticing. A line of the mouth that looked more like Jessica's than mine. A shape in the brow I had once convinced myself came from my side of the family. The danger of truth is not just that it changes the future. It contaminates the past. It makes you revisit every memory and ask whether you were loving a person or a story. And the answer in Noah's case was unbearable. Both. I went downstairs after that and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. For a while I just stared at the dark screen. Then I opened a spreadsheet. There is something obscene about translating love into numbers. But betrayal has a way of making arithmetic feel holy. I started with the obvious things first. Hospital bills, pediatric visits, prescriptions, daycare, then school tuition, backpacks, notebooks, clothes, shoes, Halloween costumes, birthday parties, soccer registration, basketball camps, braces consultations, summer programs, piano lessons he quit after 3 months, the gaming console 2 Christmases ago, the bunk bed he wanted when he was 7, even though there was no sibling to share it with. I pulled records from bank statements, insurance portals, old emails, archived receipts, anything I could find. Anything that proved what it cost to raise a child while being denied the truth about him. Every line item felt like a strange act of self-violence, because every dollar attached itself to a memory. $42 became the dinosaur backpack he refused to take off in kindergarten. $180 became the cleats he wore when he scored his first goal and came running to me, screaming, "Did you see that, Mom?" $600 became the emergency room visit when he split his chin open, trying to jump off the deck because he thought he could fly. $900 became summer camp when he cried the first night and I almost drove back to get him. I kept going. 2 in the morning. 3. By dawn, the total sat there in sharp black numbers at the bottom of the sheet. $291,400. I looked at it until my eyes blurred. That was what I had spent. What I had given. What I had poured into a life I had every reason to believe was honestly mine. A number like that should have made me feel sick. Instead, it made me feel clear. Not healed, not calm, but purposeful in the ugliest way. I made coffee and called a lawyer at 9. Her name was Rebecca Sloan, and she had the kind of voice that sounded expensive and impossible to manipulate. I told her everything. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. The DNA test, the school email, the affair, the concealment, the blood type discovery when Noah was 8 months old, 12 years of coordinated deception. She was quiet for several seconds after I finished. Then she said, "You may have claims for fraud, emotional distress, and concealment, potentially more depending on documentation and jurisdiction." I stared out the kitchen window at the dead winter grass in the backyard. Can I sue them? Yes. All of them? A pause. If your parents knowingly participated in the deception for years, then potentially, yes. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug. "What do you want to happen?" she asked. The question sat between us like a blade. Because there are moments in life where you can feel the exact point at which grief chooses its costume. Mine had chosen precision. "I want my life back," I said first. Then, because that was impossible, I told her the next closest thing. "I want every cent back that I spent raising a child under false pretenses while people lied to my face." Rebecca did not hesitate. "That," she said, "is a reasonable place to begin." By Monday, I had filed to end things with Evan. By Wednesday, papers were drafted for a civil suit against Evan, Jessica, and my parents. I included the full amount from the spreadsheet, projected legal fees, and additional damages. When Rebecca sent over the documents for review, I sat in my office reading my own name typed into legal language that turned pain into paragraphs. Plaintiff, Natalie Harrison. Defendants: Evan Cole, Jessica Harrison, Richard Harrison, and Diane Harrison. The names looked surreal together, like a family Christmas card rewritten by a disaster. News of the filing spread faster than I expected. At first, it stayed local: court watchers, small legal blogs, the kind of story people pass around because it makes them feel grateful for their own lives. Then it escaped. One headline called it "Mother Sues Family After DNA Test Exposes 13-Year Deception." Another: School Genetics Project Uncovers Affair, Fraud, and Family Cover-Up. Then came the commentators, the hot takes, the people online who reduce human devastation to team sports. Some said I was brave. Some said I was monstrous. Some said biology didn't matter because motherhood is who shows up. Others said exactly because motherhood is sacred, I had every right to seek restitution from the people who manipulated it. Strangers argued over my life while I packed Noah's lunch for school and pretended not to notice he was watching me differently now, more carefully, like he was already trying to understand which adults were safe and which were not. Evan called first. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Natalie," he said, voice shaking, "please tell me you're not really suing your parents." "I'm suing everyone who lied. They're in their 60s. They were old enough to know right from wrong." His breathing roughened through the phone. "They can't afford this." I thought of my father saying yes on the phone. Just one word, flat and final. Then I answered, "That sounds like something they should have considered 12 years ago." He started crying. Actual crying. For a second, it almost pulled me backward into the version of myself who would comfort him on instinct. But that woman had died in my living room. "You're tearing the whole family apart," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm sending the invoice." Jessica called later that night. I almost didn't pick up, but something mean in me wanted to hear what she sounded like when the truth cost her something. She was crying before she even said hello. "I know I deserve this," she whispered, "but Mom and Dad don't." That nearly made me laugh. "Then why did they help you?" "They were trying to protect Noah." "No," I said. "They were trying to protect access to him. There's a difference." "That's not fair." I stood in the laundry room folding one of Noah's sweatshirts, my hands moving automatically. Neither was letting me build my entire life around a lie. She inhaled sharply. "I loved him too." I froze. There are sentences that sound innocent until you realize what they contain. "Then you should have acted like his mother," I said, instead of disappearing into the role of aunt while I did the work. She made a broken sound on the other end. Good, I thought. And then I hated myself a little for thinking it. My parents tried to come by in person 2 days later. I saw their car from the upstairs window before they even rang the bell. Noah saw it too. He was standing in the hallway holding a bowl of cereal, his face suddenly alert, with a hope so small and painful I nearly couldn't breathe. "Are Grandma and Grandpa here?" I looked at him. He still loved them. Of course he did. Love does not vanish just because truth arrives. "Yes," I said carefully. "Can they come in?" I looked at the front door, then back at him, and something inside me split again, quieter this time. Because whatever I chose next, I would be choosing not only for myself, but for a child who still wanted the people who had helped destroy my life. "I'm not ready to see them," I said. The hope in his face dimmed. "Oh," he didn't argue. That made it worse. I went downstairs and stood on the other side of the door while they knocked. "Natalie," my mother called through the wood. "Please, we just want to talk." I said nothing. After a minute, my father spoke. "We love you." I closed my eyes. Still I said nothing. Eventually, I heard an envelope slide through the mail slot. When their footsteps retreated and the car pulled away, I picked up the note from the floor. It said only, "We are sorry. Please don't do this to us. We will make it right." I stared at the handwriting for a long time. Then I texted back a single sentence. "You can make it right in court." The first official hearing was set 6 months out. In the meantime, court-ordered DNA testing began. Real testing. Certified, admissible, impossible to explain away. Noah had to go in for it. So did Jessica. I drove him there myself. He was quiet in the car, looking out the window. At a red light, he asked, "What happens if the new test says the same thing?" I kept my eyes on the road. "It will." Another pause. "Then Aunt Jessica really is my biological mom." I hated every word in that sentence. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "And Evan?" I gripped the wheel harder. "Yes." He looked down at his hands. "Do I still get to live with you?" That question went through me like glass. I parked in the testing center lot and turned to him fully. "You will always live with me as long as you want to." His face tightened. "Even though I'm not really yours?" I leaned across the console and took his face in both hands. "Listen to me very carefully. You are mine in every way that love can make a person belong to another person. None of this changes that." He started crying then, and so did I, quietly, with our foreheads touching in the front seat. There are kinds of grief you can only survive by holding on to the one person who didn't choose any of it. When the test results came back 2 weeks later, they confirmed exactly what we already knew. Jessica was his biological mother. I had no genetic link to the boy I had raised. Rebecca called that afternoon. "The evidence is airtight now," she said. "They will likely try to settle before trial." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat alone in my office at home, staring at the framed picture on my desk of Noah at age 6, toothless and sunburned, grinning with both arms around my neck. Airtight. That was the word, as if the case had become stronger, as if anything about certainty made it easier to breathe. Upstairs, I could hear Noah moving around in his room. In the garage, there were still boxes of his baby clothes I had never been able to throw away. And in the center of my chest, there was now a terrible growing knowledge that justice was no longer going to be about what was true. It was going to be about what truth cost. The mediation was scheduled on a gray Thursday morning that felt too quiet for what it was about to hold. I remember thinking, as I parked outside the office building, that nothing about the day looked significant enough to carry the weight of 13 years of lies. No storm, no dramatic sky. Just low clouds and the kind of cold that settles into your bones without announcing itself. Inside, everything smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Neutral. Controlled. Designed for people to sit across from each other and pretend that devastation could be negotiated into something reasonable. They were already there when I walked in. All of them. Evan at one end of the table, jaw tight, suit wrinkled like he hadn't slept. Jessica beside him, smaller than I remembered somehow, as if guilt had physically reduced her. My parents across from them, sitting closer together than usual, like they needed to hold the same space to stay upright. For a second, I almost didn't recognize them. 6 months ago, this would have been a normal room, a family room. Now it looked like evidence. Rebecca sat beside me, calm and unreadable, a folder neatly arranged in front of her. The mediator introduced himself, spoke in measured tones about resolution and compromise and avoiding the unpredictability of trial. I barely heard him, because I was watching my father. He looked older. Not just older in the abstract way people age over time, but worn down in specific places. His shoulders curved slightly forward now. His hands, once steady enough to fix anything in the house, rested flat against the table as if he didn't trust them not to shake. My mother looked worse. Her eyes were red before anyone had even said anything. This was what consequences look like. Not numbers. People. The mediator finally turned to us. Let's begin with what the plaintiff is seeking. Rebecca didn't hesitate. Full restitution, she said. $291,400, plus legal fees, currently estimated at $43,000. Total, $334,400. The number sat in the center of the table like something alive. No one spoke for a moment. Then Evan's lawyer cleared his throat. My client is prepared to offer $50,000, payable over 5 years. $50,000. 5 years. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was so far from what had been taken that it felt like an insult dressed up as effort. Jessica's lawyer followed. My client has limited financial resources. She can offer $30,000 over 10 years. 10 years. A decade of installments to repay a lie that had lasted more than a decade. My gaze shifted to my parents' lawyer. He adjusted his glasses, glanced briefly at them, then spoke. My clients have $45,000 in savings. They are prepared to offer that, plus $100,000 from a home equity line of credit. My mother closed her eyes. That would bring the total to $195,000, he continued. However, this would significantly impact their retirement. Rebecca didn't even look at me before responding. That leaves a shortfall of over $130,000. The mediator folded his hands. Is there any way to increase your client's contribution? My father inhaled slowly. For a moment, I thought he might stay silent. Then he spoke. We would have to sell the house. Everything in the room stilled. Even the mediator paused. Our home is worth approximately $425,000, my father continued, voice steady in a way that felt practiced. After paying off the remaining mortgage and the line of credit, we would have about $280,000. My mother's hand found his under the table. We could contribute $235,000, he said. Combined with the others' offers, that would bring the total to $315,000. He looked at me then. Directly. We would be $15,000 short, but it is the most we can do. There it was. Not just a number. A house. Their house. The one I grew up in. The one where my father taught me how to ride a bike in the driveway. The one where my mother marked my height on the kitchen wall every year. The one they had planned to grow old in. Reduced to a line item. I felt Rebecca shift slightly beside me. It's a strong offer, she murmured quietly. You should consider it. I didn't answer, because across the table, my mother was crying silently now, her shoulders shaking, her head bowed as if she had already accepted the loss. And somewhere in my mind, a voice whispered, This is what you wanted. Consequences. Accountability. Proof that what they did mattered. The mediator leaned forward. Natalie, this is a significant concession. It avoids trial, ensures compensation, and... I need time, I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. We took a short break. Rebecca walked me into a smaller room, closing the door behind us. You should take it, she said plainly. You'll spend months in court otherwise, and there's no guarantee you'll recover more. They have to sell the house. She held my gaze. Yes. I sat down, put my hands flat on the table, and stared at nothing. Because the truth was, I had imagined this moment. Imagined them facing consequences. Imagined them feeling even a fraction of what I had felt standing in that living room, realizing my entire life had been curated for me without my consent. But I had not imagined the shape those consequences would take. I had not imagined my mother crying like that, or my father speaking about selling the house in the same tone he once used to discuss fixing a broken sink. Rebecca softened slightly. This is where most people settle, she said. It's enough to acknowledge what happened without destroying everyone involved. Destroying. That word settled into my chest. Because I didn't think of myself as someone who destroyed things. I thought of myself as someone who had been destroyed. But maybe those two things weren't as separate as I wanted them to be. I'll think about it, I said again. Back in the main room, everyone looked at me when I sat down. Waiting. Hoping. Afraid. I'm declining the settlement, I said. The reaction was immediate. Jessica gasped. My mother let out a sound I had never heard before, something between a sob and a plea. My father closed his eyes. Evan's shoulders dropped like something inside him had finally given up. The mediator tried again. Are you sure? We can continue negotiating. I'm sure. Rebecca didn't argue. She simply nodded once, already shifting into the next phase. Trial. After that, everything moved faster. Dates were set, documents exchanged, depositions scheduled, and life, somehow, continued in the spaces between. Noah started asking more questions. Not the first night questions filled with confusion. Different ones. Harder ones. Are Grandma and Grandpa really going to lose their house? Yes. Where will they live? An apartment, probably. He nodded slowly. That seems sad. The word hit me harder than any accusation could have. They made a choice, I said. Choices have consequences. He looked at me carefully. But they were trying to protect you. No, I said. They were protecting themselves. If they had told me the truth when you were a baby, I could have decided what to do. Stay, leave, figure it out. They took that decision away from me. He absorbed that, then asked the question I had been avoiding for months. Would you have left? I didn't answer immediately, because I had asked myself that question every day since the truth came out. Would I have stayed? Would I have raised him anyway, knowing from the beginning that he wasn't biologically mine? Would I have loved him differently? Or would I have walked away before love had time to root itself so deeply it became indistinguishable from identity? I don't know, I said finally. He nodded. At least it would have been your choice. Yes. He looked down at his hands again. Then quietly, I like being your choice. That nearly broke me. The week before trial, my mother called. The first time she had called in months. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Natalie, she said immediately, voice shaking. Please, I'm begging you, don't take our house. I closed my eyes. You should have thought about that before. We made a mistake, she said. A terrible mistake, but we can't lose our home over it. Your father's health, this stress, it's too much. A part of me registered that. His health, his heart, all the things that used to matter to me. Good, I said. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then she spoke again, quieter. I don't recognize you anymore. That landed deeper than anything else she had said. Because it was true. I don't recognize my life anymore, I replied. Then I hung up. Evan called next. Different tone, less pleading, more desperate logic. I know you hate me, he said. You should, but don't do this to them. They don't deserve it. They knew, I said. They were trying to protect the family. No, I said again. They were trying to control the outcome. He exhaled sharply. What do you want, Natalie? When does it stop? When we're all broke? When your parents are homeless? When Noah starts looking at you like you're the problem? That last sentence hit, because I had already seen it, in small ways. In the way Noah watched me when I talked about the case. In the way he went quiet when his grandparents were mentioned. In the way he no longer ran into my arms the way he used to. He already looks at me like that, I said quietly, and I'm the only one telling the truth. There was a long pause. Then Evan said something I hadn't expected. Truth isn't always more important than family. I looked at the empty space in front of me, at the house that felt bigger now, quieter, colder. It is to me, I said. Then I ended the call. Trial was set for 3 weeks later. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something unfamiliar creep in beneath the anger. Not doubt, not regret. Something quieter, something more dangerous. The possibility that winning might not feel the way I thought it would. The trial started on a Wednesday. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Reporters, strangers, people who had followed the story online like it was a series instead of a life. Some of them looked curious, some judgmental, some almost excited. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Rebecca, hands folded too tightly in my lap. Across from me sat the people who used to be my entire world. Evan, Jessica, my parents, 4 defendants, 4 people who once would have been listed under emergency contact in my life. Now they had lawyers. Now they had separate seats. Now they had stories to tell about what they had done to me and why. Noah sat behind me. He had insisted on being there. I didn't know if that was strength or damage. Maybe both. The judge called the room to order. And just like that, everything became official. Jessica testified first. Her lawyer painted her as frightened, young, overwhelmed. A woman who made a mistake in her early 20s and spent 13 years trying to live with it. She spoke softly, cried at the right moments, talked about fear, about shame, about not knowing how to fix something that had grown too big to fix. For a second, just a second, I almost recognized her again. Not as the woman who betrayed me, but as my little sister. Then Rebecca stood for cross-examination, and the softness disappeared. You discovered the truth when Noah was 8 months old, Rebecca said. Correct? Yes. And from that moment on, you knew Natalie was not his biological mother. Yes. And you chose not to tell her. Jessica hesitated. Yes. For 12 years. Jessica's voice dropped. Yes. During those 12 years, Rebecca continued, you watched her raise your child. Jessica flinched. Yes. You watched her pay for his care, his education, his life. Yes. You allowed her to believe something that was not true. Jessica's hands trembled. I didn't know how to tell her. Rebecca didn't soften. You didn't want to. Silence. Jessica's eyes filled. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of losing everything. Rebecca paused, then said quietly, so you chose to let Natalie lose everything instead. Jessica broke then, but it didn't change anything. Evan testified next. He admitted it all. The night. The betrayal. The lie. The years of silence. His lawyer tried to frame it as something that spiraled out of control. One mistake that became too big to undo. But Rebecca didn't let him hide behind that. You watched Natalie become a mother, she said, to a child you knew was not biologically hers. Yes. You let her believe it. Yes. You let her build her life around it. His voice cracked. Yes. Why? Evan looked down. I didn't want to lose her. The answer echoed through the courtroom, not because it was surprising, but because it was honest. And honesty, after 12 years of lies, sounded almost offensive. So, Rebecca said, you protected your relationship by removing her ability to make an informed choice about it. Evan didn't answer. He didn't have to. My parents testified together. My father spoke. My mother cried. They told the story the way they had always told themselves, that Jessica came to them terrified, that they told her to confess, that she refused, that she threatened to take Noah and disappear if they told me, that they were afraid of losing their grandson, afraid of losing their family. So they chose silence, a choice they said they regretted every day. Rebecca's questions were precise. In 12 years, did you ever reconsider telling your daughter the truth? Yes, my father said. But you didn't. No. Why? He looked at me then. For the first time since all of this began, he looked directly at me. Because we knew it would destroy her. The room was silent. Rebecca didn't miss a beat. So instead you chose to let her live in a lie. My father swallowed. Yes. And that felt better? His voice broke slightly. No, it felt easier. That answer stayed with me, not because it justified anything, but because it explained everything. I testified last. Rebecca guided me through it. Every detail, every year, every moment. Not dramatically, not angrily, just clearly. She asked about the money, the expenses, the number. But then she asked about something else. What did you lose? She said. I looked at her, then at the jury, then, without meaning to, at Noah. My life, I said. The words came out quieter than I expected. I lost my ability to trust the people closest to me. I lost the truth about my own family. I lost the right to choose what kind of life I wanted to build. My voice steadied as I continued. I loved my son with everything I had. I still do. That hasn't changed. But I loved him under a belief that was not real. And that belief was maintained by the people I trusted most. Rebecca nodded. And what do you want from this case? I didn't hesitate. I want accountability. I want them to understand that what they did has consequences. She let that sit, then asked the question everyone had been circling. Even if it means your parents lose their home? The room held its breath. Yes, I said. The defense tried to paint me as cold, as vindictive, as someone who cared more about money than family. Your son still calls you mom, one of the lawyers said. Doesn't that mean something? It means everything, I answered. Then why do this? Because that was the question, wasn't it? Why destroy what was left? Because loving him doesn't erase what they did, I said. It makes it worse. The trial lasted 4 days. Closing arguments blurred together. Words like justice, truth, family, forgiveness, consequences, all thrown around like they had fixed meanings. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours to measure 12 years. When they came back, I already knew. I could see it in their faces. The verdict was in my favor. All counts. Full damages. $291,400 plus legal fees. Split between the 4 of them. The numbers were read out loud. My mother collapsed. Literally collapsed. A bailiff had to help her into a chair. My father held her hand, his face pale, eyes fixed somewhere between me and the floor. Jessica cried. Evan didn't. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, like someone who had finally reached the end of something he had been falling through for a long time. Rebecca leaned toward me. You won, she said. I nodded. But I didn't feel like I had won anything. Outside the courtroom, Noah found me. He didn't hug me. He just stood there. Are you happy now? He asked. The question was simple, but it felt impossible. No, I said. Then why did you do it? Because it was right. He looked at me for a long moment, then said something that would stay with me longer than the verdict. It doesn't feel right. Everything after that happened quickly. My parents put their house on the market. It sold in 3 days. Fast. Clean. Final. After everything was paid, the mortgage, the loans, the judgment, they were left with almost nothing. They moved into a small apartment across town. My mother went back to work. At 65, part-time at a grocery store. My father couldn't work anymore. His heart condition got worse. Stress, the doctor said. As if stress were something that arrived on its own. Jessica left the state. Started over somewhere no one knew her. Evan disappeared into work and payment plans. And Noah stayed with me. Full custody. Legally. Officially. But something had shifted. He was polite. Quiet. Distant. We ate dinner together, but not like before. We watched TV, but not really together. There was a space between us now. Not because he stopped loving me, but because I had done something he didn't understand. I had hurt the people he loved, even if they deserved it, even if I was right. Last week was his 14th birthday. I tried. I really tried. His favorite dinner. The games he wanted. His friends over. He smiled. Said thank you. Blew out the candles. But later, when one of his friends asked why his grandparents weren't there, Noah said simply, my mom sued them and they lost their house. The room went quiet. And in that silence, I saw it. Not judgment from strangers, but something worse. A reflection of what I had become in someone else's story. The money came in. Installments. Wire transfers. Checks. Numbers becoming real again. It sat in an account I haven't touched. Because every dollar feels like a reminder of what it cost. I got what I asked for. Justice. Accountability. Proof that what they did mattered. And in return, I lost my parents. My sister. The version of my life I thought I had. And slowly, I am losing my son. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just quietly. In the way he doesn't sit as close anymore. In the way he doesn't laugh the same. In the way he looks at me sometimes like he's trying to understand me and failing. The worst part is, he's not wrong. Because I don't fully understand myself anymore either. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to understand betrayal. And they do now. Every single one of them. But so does Noah. And that's the part I didn't calculate. I lie awake at night sometimes doing the math again. Not money. Time. 13 years of love built on a lie. 1 year of truth that destroyed everything. Was it worth it? I don't know. Legally? Yes. Morally? I'm not sure anymore. All I know is this. I was right. And I still lost everything that mattered. Sometimes being right doesn't save you. Sometimes it just leaves you alone.